So, I went for a walk today and something started to bug me. Um, all my life I've had avoidance issues, right? And I document them all over the fucking place. Um, just in terms of like, yeah, there's things I really need to do, and I end up, maybe picking something lower off the list simply because it's a way to avoid the things that are more important and therefore somehow I don't want to do. And this has little to do, really nothing to do with that. Instead, on this walk, and I think I've mentioned this briefly, but I wanted to explore it more somehow, is the tremendous sadness. And this has to do with the grief and all that lined up. There's no question there, but it's not shedding, it's not weakening. That comes with anything that I've done before with my past life, or anything that I haven't done, seen, or whatever that I wish I could show her, or things that remind me, or things that remind me of not, and just it's kind of it's funny because I don't know which is worse. Every memory is tied up, good or bad, in pain. It's a similar kind of dichotomy there. So like I remember good moments that were, that I think back on fondly, and that maybe the two of us together would have thought back on fondly to a certain degree. Or moments of hardship that honestly I've always kind of thought back on fondly as well, because sometimes we felt the closest when things were kind of at their worst, whatever, especially for her, not so much for me, because I don't know, what is my worst, usually the solution is fucking obvious, and it's just not what I can do. It's my inaction and that avoidance capability and whatever. But in the case of in the case of things with her, like the noise in Phoenix, or the noise at the apartment that we moved into first in Eugene, or just things that were times of trouble where I could be there for her, we could go on walks and whatnot. And that helped, and there was just more of a connection because of the escapes that she had. The only way she had of escaping from these things seemed to involve me, which made them kind of special for me in their own way. So all of those things I kind of look back on fondly, but when I remember them, they hurt. They hurt like hell. But even just simple things like, I cook a certain meal in the kitchen, or almost anything, washing dishes, going out and doing yard work. All of these things are so intrinsically tied up in my memories that it's almost this devastating pain, emotional pain, that comes along with them. On the other hand, I kind of I treasure these memories, but I can't touch them without it hurting. There's kind of you get this physical reaction when you touch something hot and it burns. You don't touch that something hot again. But here, there's certainly a tendency towards that. That's part of my, drown myself in video games or in reading a book or in whatever actions, was one of them, whatever actions I could do where I never had to think about the things that hurt. But on the other hand, you know, by avoiding them, it's almost as if I'm cutting off and losing everything that's important in, the last 10 years or whatever. More than that now. I don't know. I in a sense, every other, every, I mean, within a certain amount of time, and I may not have reached that amount of time yet, I had gotten into a position where there wasn't as much to remind me. There weren't as many things. Now, I have to say, when I lived in Buffalo, all of my breakups, whatever, because I was in the same town, because I was in the same place, definitely impacted me, but not necessarily that terribly. I was more, disturbed by my loneliness, which I felt immediately, within the first few months. I was really like, I need to find someone else or whatever, but I don't think there is a someone else. I don't think there can be. I really, largely because the effort involved in forming, that kind of long relationship, the costs of just, I don't know, compromises and whatnot. I don't think I have the energy in me ever again to go through that. I didn't really have it for her. You get worn down. The passions and whatnot that, I felt in my 20s, well, those were just never available again in the same sort of way. And some of that feels like, sometimes I say, well, that was us. We just didn't mix in that way. And that's possible, but it also may just be that I'm no longer that kind of person. I can't do that anymore. I can't give that fully of myself. I can't be that loving. And when I do hang out with another person, well, I mean, it's not like I've been with someone where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm interested. I'm really interested. It's always been kind of like, well, I don't know, it's just not not the kind of depth to move me, and that's the thing. The passions that I had in my 20s were enough to suck away the grieving and the pain. What happened with my first wife was a little different. It was very, very painful. I was floored and stunned in the same way as this death stunned me in a lot of ways. Not the same. So the big difference there is there's this feeling of guilt, now. It's like, it's one thing to say, well, maybe if I had been X, we could still be together. It's another thing to say, maybe if I had been or done X, you'd still be alive. There's a significant difference there. But after those first couple, well, I don't even know, because so it took less than a month for me to get out of Buffalo after my first wife kicked me out. I had no future there. I had nothing there. I moved back with my family in kind of a split living arrangement and whatnot. And I mean, I was miserable. I was sad. There was a lot of the oh, there was a lot of the pain there for some time. Um, School, my hope in going back to school at that point was well, that would be a great place to meet people because that was the only way I'd kind of met people before, and that didn't really work out. But my life was such a hell there that the hell made it difficult. It put me in a different position. I had a lot of work to do for school. I had also long walks and whatnot with pain, just like I did early on here. But I can remember those kind of walks just continuing on, month after month, not a single walk, obviously, but month after month of things kind of like that drifted, but that was because my life was pain. So I got to sort of level down. Here, this time, first thing is, my initial reaction was to button myself up and throw myself into, not really denial, but doing the kinds of avoidant things that kept me from having to think and hurt. And then I did start going for some walks, started experiencing more of the pain. But I wasn't forced into sort of that continual existence of pain. And I don't really. I mean, maybe it was very similar. Maybe it was very similar in a lot of ways. I know, I couldn't find a job after school, which is why I went to grad school. I couldn't do particularly well. I couldn't shine the way I would need to in grad school to get what I wanted out of it, or to the degree that I did. I didn't like what the result was, so I turned away from it. And then we're talking a 4-year period now that I've eaten up before I moved to Phoenix and started work there. And work there was this jarring change. It wasn't like everything's perfect. I missed the hell out of Eugene. I missed the hell out of my time here. The things that I liked here. But the outside was so different, being in a desert. And also having, a regular 7 to 3 job because I had to sneak in early in order to get any work done. Once people were there, I couldn't work any longer. Having that regular structure of a job, a walk every day to and from work, that wasn't very long, but it was pretty, and it was a nice walk, and it was very seldom a real hassle, right? Here, such a walk, even 25, 30 minutes, would be a real hassle during the rainy season. There were a few days where the weather was so bad that I wouldn't want to. And I had a new city to learn. I had a year at least of learning where the city, what the things were around the city, and pretty much realizing that, wow, Phoenix really fucking sucks overall. I mean, it's just a really crappy city to live in, at least for someone like me. Yeah, and then sort of devoted myself more and more to living inside my flat, condo eventually, whatever, and although that was after her, and going swimming a couple times a day, just as the way to get out. But now I'm pretty much just internal all the time. I can't even push myself to go outside and do the things that I did uh, when she was around. And I mean, part of it may just be time. It may just take me so fucking long to get out of the sort of pain. I'm at the point where, yeah, I was still, I think, fairly raw when a year and a half out or whatever um, from my first wife booting me. So, I mean, maybe there's some kind of hope at least that I won't be this miserable all the time. Um, of course, to some extent, the avoidance stuff, which is just baked into who I am, is the cause of so much of my misery. The pain actually isn't as bad. Because there's a certain pleasure to the pain. There's a certain, mixture of feeling the hurt. But yeah, I mean, I go out. I go out once a week to go dancing, and the walk there is long enough. Just like the walk to shopping, which is every couple of weeks, it's long enough that a certain amount of hurt builds up, and I get there, and I get myself royally drunk now. I usually did anyway, but I've put less brakes on it. Started earlier. And get there a little earlier. That means an extra beer, no juice or anything to slow things down. Higher alcohol content beers for longer, and then on my way home, I quite often can't remember a damn thing about it. I'm sort of on autopilot. First of all, yeah, I'm pretty fucking tired by that point. Even if I just woke up before I went, it's still a huge expenditure of energy, not just the walking, but and the alcohol, but then the dancing is a huge expenditure. And I think sort of my brain and body shut down to a certain degree. Even when I'm not drunk or anything, I feel like I've shut down over long periods of the walk. But I do find myself, at some point or another in the walk, maybe feeling this just tremendous sadness, which of course the alcohol helps create, and then other emotions that mix in and cause similarly, again, more passions raised, injustice, desire, whatever. It all kind of mixes together, just in this slosh of alcohol and hurt and whatnot. That if I was a person who acted on things, I probably would pay a great price for these feelings. And then I get home. Well, I do whatever I do when I get home, which is often grab something to eat or whatever, go to sleep, and then the next day I just feel so much a depressive sort of lethargy, but I think that was always there as the aftermath of the big, of the big night out and whatnot that didn't really come to anything, never does. But, and I don't know that there's terribly a point to all of this, which means then I can wander to other places. Like when I posted on Facebook, The reason I went is on my way to the bar on Friday. I ran into what was apparently, I don't know, they finished construction on something down to the river where they're putting a park in or whatever. And I don't really like what they've done, what I can see of it. It's not finished, but to commemorate that they had gotten the bike path back open and everything, they made this sort of celebration down there, which is also in conjunction. There's a big track and field event going on right now. So combined with that, and well, I couldn't go down through it because I had my drink with me, which was just pink lemonade or whatever, but they wouldn't let you take drinks through. That was pretty obvious. They had cops posted at the entranceway. And this kind of bugged me at first. It's like, great, there's this little event, some tents, they're selling food and whatnot. There's really nothing going on that's that exciting. It's a walkway I'd like to use because it's more pleasant than the other, but whatever. And they don't even let you bring a fucking, bottle in. It didn't seem like the kind of event. I remember in Phoenix they would have a few really big events where, yeah, you couldn't bring the bottles into the park in Scottsdale, but most of the time, whatever the event was, you were allowed to walk through with whatever you're drinking or whatever. Nobody cared. It was just part of the park was being used for an event, and that's great, And it would be a fairly big thing, bigger than this. But on the other side, for the really big events, they were doing that. But it seems so, I don't know, so mercenary to me to say, oh, you can't bring food or drink or a bag or anything in anymore without, all this kind of security to make sure you're not, what used to be the case, smuggling, I guess, alcohol in, but who cares? Just even water, it doesn't matter. Where you would be allowed to bring that into the park normally, in the sense that nobody would stop you, you just wouldn't be allowed to have it. It would be illegal, but nobody cared. But yeah, beyond that, what did surprise me was when I got up there, there was a fucking, and the word for this month, magnetometer, which is just a gun screening device or metal detector device set up at the entrances. And, I kind of see why they're doing it with the way America's been going, but we cannot give away, and I feel like the bottle thing is a part of this too. The freedoms, the liberties that were just natural for us have just been being eaten away. And, much as I can say, yeah, I can see why you wouldn't want a mass shooting to happen, but fuck it, that's what we've decided. We've decided this country is about mass shootings. Let's just fucking embrace it. Let's stop hindering other freedoms. I used to walk out of school and cut across from one building to another when I was in high school. That was perfectly fine. All the doors were open. Kids would carry a fucking sheath knife on their hip. No big deal. Let's just pay the price we've agreed to pay, all right? Let's not give away more things. We agree we're going to kill, 30 or 40 kids every 6 months or every 3 months or whatever. We're going to have shootings in hospitals, malls, movie theaters. Let's just agree, let's have it. Let's just say it's cool, because trying to stop it, the cost of that is way more than the cost of the lives. We used to have horrific auto injury deaths that have gone way down over time. Well, it was just part of life. It was just part of life. And I think we just need to embrace that, there are going to be bad things done by bad people. And if we're not willing to restrict, what is sort of the force multiplier. Because, yeah, somebody with a knife could kill 4 or 5 people. But now we're allowing, weapons that can fire multiple rounds per second with large magazines and whatnot, and it's just cool. That's another thing I don't remember, just to mix things up. Whether or not there was an open carry situation in an area. I grew up in fairly rural area, smallish town. You'd see people carrying a rifle or something to go hunting. Maybe they'd go out in the woods to go plink or whatever. You wouldn't see that shit in cities because cities had legitimate gun control. Somehow that's gone away. But yeah, you'd see people, but they had a reason. What you didn't see was what I saw in Arizona, which was people just wandering around with their assault rifle hanging around on their neck. And I saw it here too. It's a lot less likely here. There was more of a making a political statement about it in Arizona. Like people would just do it because I guess it gave them a boner or whatever. Here the only time I saw it was when the BLM protests were happening. And I think they were actually leftists who were guarding the protest against the cops more than the other side. It's just a feeling I got. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, both places are open carry. Here it feels a lot more reasonable. You don't see people trying to make a political statement in and of itself by just carrying their gun around, which just looks... I mean, when I moved, when I was in Venezuela for a year, it was the police only that had them. But, yeah, I mean, my mom was just so horrified to see these policemen walking around with, submachine guns and whatnot, and rifles, in the sense of like, yeah, wow, this ain't like America, man. This is like a police state or whatever. Well, now we've got something much weirder. We're like Mad Max state, I mean, it really is. It's feeling like all of the intentions are heading that way. So that took a strange turn, didn't it? But yeah, I mean, in terms of that, it just, I remember we've got these complaints about like the helicopter parents and all that, and kids not being able to just go to the park and everything, because what happened was these stories of bad things happening, there were always bad things happening, just got bloated so far out of range, and then they snowball. They become something where somebody's like, oh, yeah, I could do that. Sure doesn't help. Yeah, sometimes you hear, the right make their complaints about movies and glorification of violence in media, in games and whatnot. That was always kind of there. I mean, you watch the old cowboy movies and everything, that high testosterone, gonna shoot it out and whatever. But it was mellower up until the 60s. It was definitely a mellower type of feel. But I mean, we've had periods of sort of mass violence before. Things calm down. I think we should just ride it out, count on seeing if we draw our aces and eights or whatever. Anyway, that turned out a lot more fun than what I started with, so we'll just leave it all together and see what the hell.